And 2pac Shakur's murderer is speaking out from behind bars for the first time. Dwayne "Keefe D. Davis insists he was 300 miles away when the rapper was shot. Now he's pointing the finger at someone else.
When 2pac Shakur was gunned down in 1996, the world lost more than a rapper. It lost a revolutionary voice. But years later, when the doors to his garage were finally opened, what people found wasn't just steel and chrome. It was a time capsule.
The rap legend did die in Las Vegas in 1996 at the age of 25, but his legacy still very much alive.
A sentimental collection that told the story of a man who lived fast, fought hard, and rode like a king. From bulletproof beasts to lowriders soaked in West Coast flavor, this shocking discovery revealed layers of his personality the world never got to fully see. His taste, his rebellion, his rise from the struggle. Come with us as we discover what was found in the hip-hop legend's garage. The man, the myth, the legend. 2pac Amaru Shakur, known to the world simply as 2pac, wasn't just a rapper, he was a force of nature. Born in East Harlem on June 16, 1971, to Black Panther activists, 2pac entered life with revolution already coursing through his veins. He wasn't raised in privilege or comfort. He was raised on the streets, in shelters, in the margins of America, absorbing the raw reality that would later fuel his unmatched lyrical power. By the early 90s, 2pac had emerged as a bold new voice in hip-hop, angry, poetic, insightful, and unfiltered. With tracks like Brenda's Got a Baby, Keep Ya Head Up, and Changes, he wasn't just rapping, he was educating, agitating, and awakening. He spoke for the voiceless, for the poor, for the incarcerated, for young black men growing up in a system stacked against them. His words weren't crafted for radio, they were carved from pain, pride, and purpose. But 2pac wasn't only an artist, he was a paradox, revolutionary and gangster, poet and outlaw, spiritual and profane. He wrote sensitive poems about love and loss, then turned around and dropped fiery battle tracks like Hit 'Em Up. This complexity made him both beloved and feared, an icon you couldn't easily define. Despite numerous controversies, run-ins with the law, and a highly publicized feud with fellow rapper Biggie Smalls, 2pac's star only rose higher. Signing with Death Row Records in 1995 after a brief prison stint, he released All Eyes on Me, the first double album in hip-hop history to go multi-platinum. It was a victory lap wrapped in verses, celebrating his freedom, wealth, and defiance. Yet beneath the fame was a man constantly aware of death. He often predicted he wouldn't live long, saying, "I'm not saying I'm going to change the world, but I guarantee that I will spark the brain that will." Tragically, those words proved prophetic. On September 13, 1996, at just 25 years old, 2pac was shot and killed in a drive-by shooting in Las Vegas, a murder that remains unsolved to this day. His legacy, however, is anything but dead. 2pac lives on in every protest chant, every lyric about injustice, every artist who dares to speak truth to power. His music still resonates across generations, his face still printed on murals, t-shirts, and album covers. He was a man who carried the weight of the streets and the hope of his people, and somehow managed to remain human through it all. But 2pac didn't just live through music and poetry. He also lived through movement, fast cars, loud engines, and luxury vehicles that mirrored his contradictions. Each car he owned or rode in tells a chapter of his life. When the garage doors finally swung open, what they found inside was more than just carbon fiber and horsepower. It was a never-seen-before glimpse into 2pac's world, raw, fast, luxurious, and untamed. For 2pac Shakur, cars weren't just about speed or style. They were statements, symbols of freedom, rebellion, and everything he had fought to achieve. And for a man who came from nothing, every ignition was a reminder that he had made it. The Cherokee. When they opened 2pac's garage, what they found tucked between the exotic metal and bulletproof beasts was a modest yet symbolic ride, a black Jeep Cherokee. It wasn't the flashiest car in his collection, but it was the most personal. Why? Because this was the first car 2pac ever bought. On his 21st birthday, June 16, 1992, 2pac walked into a dealership and dropped a $10,000 down payment on a brand new black Jeep Cherokee, priced at $29,298.99. The paperwork listed his full name, Tupac A. Shakur, and his Oakland address, 275 MacArthur Boulevard, apartment H, Oakland, California, 94610. It was the first real asset he ever owned under his own name, and it symbolized his escape from poverty and instability. For a young man who had come from shelters, eviction notices, and broken systems, the keys to that Jeep weren't just for driving. They were for unlocking a new life. The Cherokee's practical design, automatic transmission, and rugged build fit Tupac's early lifestyle. It was a car for the streets, durable, gritty, and unpretentious, just like him. What shocked many when looking inside Tupac's garage was the emotional weight that came with this vehicle. This was his purchase. A symbol of hard-earned independence in a world that never made it easy for him. In a collection filled with luxury and controversy, the Jeep Cherokee stood out as something rare, a simple car with a powerful story. It wasn't just the first vehicle in Tupac's garage, it was the first step in the journey that would define a legend. The Range Rover. Among the many powerful machines owned by the hip-hop legend, one stood out, not just for its luxury, but for the story it carried. It was a sleek ivory Range Rover, one of the first of its kind during the SUV's early debut in the US market. Tupac, always ahead of the curve, was among the earliest owners of this V8-powered beast that blended off-road capability with high-end comfort. For a man straddling the line between street and stardom, it was the perfect match. But what truly shocked fans wasn't just the vehicle, it was what happened to it. The Range Rover didn't last long in Pac's possession. It was borrowed without permission by his close friend and fellow Outlaws member, Hussein Fatal, who totaled it shortly after. The incident sparked serious tension. Even within the wild world of Death Row Records, everyone knew you didn't mess with Tupac's things. His fury was so intense, Fatal was reportedly sent straight back to California after the wreck. The Range Rover wasn't just a fancy ride for Tupac, it was a symbol of his rapid ascent. It appeared in a few of his music videos and represented a transition from street soldier to mogul in the making. The shock came not only from how quickly it was destroyed, but from what it revealed. How even within his circle, boundaries were fragile, and betrayal could come from anywhere. The Rolls-Royce Corniche 4. When the doors to Tupac's garage were opened, what they found inside painted a picture of wealth, power, and influence. But not everything was as it seemed. Among the most iconic and luxurious rides associated with Tupac was the Rolls-Royce Corniche 4, a car he adored, flaunted, and was often seen driving. Yet, in a heartbreaking twist, things were not as they seemed. This gleaming Rolls-Royce was the crown jewel of his collection, a ride that embodied success. Tupac loved this car, proudly showcasing it in public and in music videos. To the world, it was his. But behind the scenes, the registration told a different story. The vehicle was owned by none other than Suge Knight, the infamous head of Death Row Records. After Tupac's tragic death, his mother Afeni Shakur made a shocking discovery. Expecting to inherit the fruits of her son's hard work, she instead found that much of what Tupac thought was his, including this beloved Rolls-Royce, wasn't. "I discovered he had next to nothing," she said. The house he believed he bought, not his. The Rolls-Royce he cherished, also not his. To add insult to injury, the car's license plates and registration later surfaced through a memorabilia dealer, sold for tens of thousands, while Afeni was left to pick up the emotional pieces. The Rolls-Royce Corniche 4 wasn't just a car. It represented everything Tupac had fought to gain: dignity, wealth, status, and that was the real shock. Tupac had built a kingdom, but even his throne was leased. The 1995 Jaguar XJS. Amid all the high-end rides found inside Tupac's garage, one car stood out not just for its beauty, but for the simple fact that it was truly his. The 1995 Jaguar XJS, a sleek emerald green convertible, was one of the few vehicles actually registered under Tupac's own name. And that alone made it special. This British classic wasn't about brute force or over-the-top flair. It was about elegance, independence, and personal taste. In a world where many of 2pac's cars were leased or controlled by death row records, the Jaguar was his escape, both literally and symbolically. The Jaguar XJS made a memorable appearance in 2pac's To Live and Die in LA music video, cruising under the West Coast sun like it belonged there. It quickly became a fan favorite, not just for its style, but for what it represented: freedom, ownership, and authenticity. For a man who often felt trapped between fame, enemies, and expectations, this car was something he could truly call his own. Years after 2pac's death, the Jag reappeared, this time on eBay, complete with original paperwork and 2pac's signature. The starting bid? $40,000. For fans, it wasn't just a car, it was a never-seen-before piece of history, a piece of 2pac's real life that had somehow survived the chaos. The Jaguar XJS reminded the world that underneath the platinum albums and public battles, 2pac was still just a young man trying to build something of his own. One key, one ride, one verse at a time.